Hey guys, just wanted to hop on really quick and let you guys know that this episode does have a little bit of audio issues. I tried to clean it up as much as I could, but some of it was just unfixable. So I just decided to, instead of not having an episode, we decided to keep it in and, just bear with us, bear with that quality, and just enjoy this great conversation that we have with our great guest, Stephen Brda. So please, as always, enjoy the episode. Hello and welcome to yet another Imperial Cantina. Here we are, Jackson. We're finally past The Force Awakens. We're into Rogue One, and we're here to have some drinks, sit down with a guest, and talk about Star Wars with our very special guest today, which is my very good friend, Stephen Brda. Stephen, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
Wonderful. Jackson, how are you on this fine evening?
I'm hanging out. I'm having a good time.
Hanging out, having a good time? Great. Well, Stephen, it has been a long time coming getting you on this show specifically because we've had quite the past. I know you know that. We used to have a great YouTube movie review show that we do not speak of today.
No,
but
we've not.
We do kind of, at the top of these shows, like to have a little segment where we just ask our guests some questions and talk about what they like in Star Wars and what Star Wars means to them. So the first thing that I want to ask to you is kind of just lately, what have you been up to when it comes to Star Wars? Have you been watching anything recently? Have you been reading anything like that? What have you been up to in the realm of Star Wars recently?
So, unfortunately, with the realm of Star Wars, I really haven't gotten too much into it as of lately. I like to take a break every now and then. The latest thing today, actually, I watched episode 16 of The Mandalorian: The Rescue, because I had to watch that Luke entrance scene over again. Just how good it was to see them actually bringing back Luke into the show, or into Star Wars, if anything, since we've only seen him since really just episode 8 or episode 9.
Well, we haven't seen that version of Luke since like 1983.
True. As far as it goes, really, the last time I actually did anything Star Wars was watch the OG and the prequel trilogy.
Nice.
Pretty much all in one day.
You do a little marathon?
Yeah, I binged it.
Awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. So what do you think was your main introduction to Star Wars? What do you think was your first experience with Star Wars?
Oh, that's kind of, it's not really a broad subject, but more or less like that's unlocking the memory banks there. I would have to say my first actual introduction.
Just the first
to Star
thing you
Wars,
remember when it comes to Star Wars in your life.
The first thing I remember when watching Star Wars was that my dad purchased a 3 videotape set, and he's like, "I'm gonna introduce you to Star Wars. This is something that I thought was cool back in the late 70s, early 80s." I'm like, okay. So little did I know I would actually get really obsessed with this thing I would love to call Star Wars.
So was your first experience the OG trilogy?
OG episode 4.
And you said he purchased it in like the 80s. So
No. Like as in like when he enjoyed it during the 70s and 80s when he first watched it.
So you grew up with the special editions, I want to assume?
No. Like episode 4, 5, and 6, all in
like the OG version.
Like cassette tapes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Mm-hmm. You're one of the lucky few to experience the theatrical releases.
Yes,
of
indeed.
The original trilogy. I know, Jackson. Did you ever grow up?
No,
Did you grow up with the theatrical?
I grew up with special editions.
Yeah, I did too. Yeah, because that's all Blockbuster had was the special editions. That's awesome though. So one thing I do want to ask you, because I feel like this is kind of like picking your favorite child, but what do you think is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Mine? Oh,
yes. If you had to say. So like, this isn't a definitive answer, but just like at this moment, if you had to say what your favorite Star Wars movie was, what would it be?
Right. Always as a kid, I would have to say episode 6, Return of the Jedi.
Really? Yeah. I was one of those guys. Jackson's a Return of the
Good
Jedi
answer.
guy.
Return of the Jedi was episode 4 started it all, of course. I always enjoyed it since it was the beginning of something that we never really expected would go as far as it does now. Episode 5, I wasn't a huge fan of when I was a kid because of the fact that it was just so dark. But now, as like a young adult, I've learned to appreciate it so much.
It's a very deep Star Wars movie too.
Oh, indeed. Episode 6, I always loved Luke coming in, saving the day on Jabba's barge, and them going to Endor, and then the definitive fight between Luke and Vader, the red and green. I just always loved that when I was a kid.
I mean, I think Jackson would agree that like the swashbuckling adventure nature of Return of the Jedi is a lot of the appeal.
It's just a good bit of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. A couple more questions for you. What is your favorite Star Wars character? Loaded question, but if you had to say.
Very loaded question. As I have more time to think on it, I know everyone will probably say, honestly, like, I love Obi-Wan Kenobi, very near dear to my heart, but I would have to say Han Solo have to be by far my favorite character.
Not Boba Fett? Come on. You were with Jackson this whole time until right now.
I know I was. Boba Fett was a really cool character going into episode 5 when we were really first introduced into him, and then episode 6, the little segment, and then thrown in the Sarlacc pit. Falls in the Sarlacc pit. But Han Solo, just the smuggler that he is, the introduction, the portrayal by Harrison Ford, that it's impressive. It's near perfection.
So would you say you're a Star Wars story guy? You like that movie?
Oh, I absolutely enjoyed it. I loved it. A lot of people gave it a lot of hate when it first came out. They did not seem to enjoy it one bit. I'm like, you have to understand, it's not Harrison Ford that we're seeing here. It's a brand new, it's fresh face. Alden Ehrenreich did a fantastic job as Han Solo, portraying him every single bit, every single scene. That I just loved Alden as Han Solo.
Jackson, what about you? I haven't really heard your take on Solo in general yet. I know this is kind of off topic, but what is your just general take on Solo as a movie?
I've only seen it less than a handful of times. I saw it late. I remember that. I don't think I ever saw it in theaters.
Mm-hmm.
And
you call yourself a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, it was a time when going to the theaters was different for me. But I like it. I think it's a good. I like the adventure in it, and I agree that it kind of gets a little more hate than I think it necessarily deserves.
Yeah, right.
I think its ending can be a little muddled. It gets kind of like, where are we going next? But I don't think it crashes and burns like everyone says it does.
For sure, yeah. And
I think it had a lot of potential, and I kind of wish that they continue more with like Solo stuff like that.
And a lot of the main criticism of that film is Alden Ehrenreich's performance and like how he doesn't really capture the essence of Han Solo, which is a take that I do not necessarily agree with. But aside from the point, we have a couple more questions for you, Stephen, before we get into the guts of Rogue One. This is also a hard question to answer. The next two ones are a little difficult, so I apologize. But what is your most anticipated Star Wars film or TV show coming out soon that has been announced?
Well, we can always agree with that. Kenobi is pretty much the main. Kenobi is like number one, pretty much. I think on everyone's list that I've talked to. My personal favorite, the one I'm really rooting for the most, is Acolyte. The fact that we're getting a show based off the Sith is something that I think that a lot of us Star Wars fans have been waiting for a long time.
Yeah,
a long time. Really, it's more or less the fact that we'll actually get to see like what actually goes on, because we've seen this cookie cutter world where it's just like, okay, Jedi Master, trainee, Padawan. Now we actually get to see what it's like for the Sith.
Yeah. And I mean, we don't really know the deep details of, what it's going to get into, and if it's just going to be like Master Padawan, or if it's just going to be a Sith Master, or what's going on. So I'm interested. I'm more curious than anything for the Acolyte, for sure. And then this is kind of a new question that we've never asked a guest before, but I wanted to ask you because I know you've been thinking about this. But if you had all of the power at Lucasfilm and you were able to take the reins and green light any movie or TV show that you could, what do you think your initial pitch would be for a Star Wars movie or TV show?
Initially, I would like to see something based off of Yoda.
Okay.
Like,
That'd be cool.
there is. Go ahead, Jackson.
I just
You
said
said that'd be cool, yeah.
That'd be cool.
Oh, okay, sorry. Honestly, we don't get to see a lot of Yoda after like episode 3 because he goes into exile. I would like to see something along the lines of like him visiting Dagobah and his further connections with the Force, or possibly something even before Phantom Menace. There's a lot of gray area along those lines.
Yeah.
And I think I'd like to see something along like maybe him starting the current Jedi Order that we see in Phantom Menace, or something along the lines of where he's trained by someone else.
Well, yeah, and that's, me and Jackson have kind of been diving into the High Republic, and Yoda is still a prominent Jedi Master at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant in the High Republic, and that's still like 200-300 years before
but he's
Phantom
like,
Menace.
his focus is like on teaching the younglings, that he just kind of takes them on adventures, so he doesn't really deal with Jedi affairs at all.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's very...
I don't think we've seen him, like, I don't think we've like met him in any of the books yet. It's only been by mention or by name.
Yeah, he's like by mention and like in passing. So
he's just rumored as like this Jedi Master, and like we know his name, we know he exists, we know that he takes these younglings or these Jedi Padawans or these
like all the Jedi know him.
Yeah,
and like 200-300 years before the Phantom Menace. So he's still a prominent. But that'd be interesting to see, like where the development of his life from like earlier than when we see him as this old wise Jedi Master. So that'd be cool to see too.
Can I say one more show that I would like to see?
Go for it. Yeah. Anytime.
I know it's like, well, it's already been discussed. Honestly, I would like to see something along the lines of Darth Vader. Now, everyone's going to say,
didn't we just get a 9-movie saga of Darth Vader?
I know we got a 9-movie saga, but we didn't really get to see anything after episode 3 and before episode 4.
That'd be rad.
I think that's why we're getting the Kenobi show. I think we're going to get a lot of juicy Vader stuff in the Kenobi show.
Hopefully we get to see a lot of juicy Vader stuff with Hayden Christensen reprising his role as Darth Vader. Me and Braydon were actually talking about this during Rogue One. But honestly, like, there is a lot of lore that goes in with Vader between that time gap.
Yeah.
It's just like, what happened that made him the character that he is now in episode 4 compared to when he was just fresh into the suit in episode 3, learning the dark side.
Yeah. It's certainly something to ponder. But yeah, those are great pitches, and I would love to see either of those shows or properties or anything. I love seeing more info on Yoda, especially because news to everybody here. Braydon has finished the Clone Wars, and I just finished the.
Oh my God!
I watched it a little out of order, but I finished the Yoda arc today, actually, as we speak, and it's one of my favorite Clone Wars arcs. So I'm in a very Yoda mood right now.
Season 6 is by far one of the best seasons that they introduced. They were going to leave it at that on Netflix as the definitive final season.
Well, I think it was actually cut short. They were originally planning on a season 7, and then Clone Wars got canceled. And then Dave Filoni was like, "Well, crap, might as well start Star Wars Rebels." That's basically how that went.
Well, glad they brought it back to
for sure.
At least give us something into episode 3. So
yeah, for sure. Well, now that is done, let's dive in to Rogue One. The reason why everybody is here. I'm so excited to dive into this movie. I remember me and Steven actually went and saw this film together with a couple of friends. But Steven, we'll start with you. Just your overall big picture reaction. What is kind of your overall thoughts of this movie?
Well, when I first was going into it, I was like, cool, new Star Wars film, something else I can love about it. Halfway through, I'm just like, wow, okay, this is the movie, this is the film it's going to be. Okay.
Yeah.
Towards the climax of the film, I definitely enjoyed the final battle. And the one scene that we get, I was not expecting, totally makes up for the rest of the film.
Yeah.
And I exit the film going, this is probably one of the best films I've seen since Empire, if not on par with it.
Well, what do you think, like, the climate was as a Star Wars fan coming out of The Force Awakens and being introduced to, like, this new version of Star Wars, and then being introduced to A New Hope, which is almost like a prequel, not New Hope, being introduced to Rogue One, which is a prequel to A New Hope?
I definitely think there was a lot of speculation about this, definitely because of the fact that everyone's just got out the Force Awakens hype. They're thinking like, okay, cool, but now it's not. Now it's going back to before the era of what we just entered. Now we're going back to OG, so I think there's a lot riding on it.
Yeah.
As in the fact that people want to see what actually happened before Episode 4, because in Episode 4 we were just launched into this universe with a Star Destroyer chasing a rebel ship.
Yeah.
So honestly, if a lot of people share the same speculation as I did and they left it as I did, honestly I think they would have enjoyed it. But that's just me.
Cool. Jackson, what about you? What's kind of your overall big picture reaction for Rogue One?
I think this movie does a really good job at giving a lot of information for it to have the ending be the ending that it is.
Yeah.
To where it just kind of ends up into this like really big like I guess like jump into action. It's definitely just like everything just kind of falls into chaos, and like I think with everything prior to that, it sets up for essentially this like mountaintop to just crumble.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
Yeah, I like Rogue One a lot. I think Rogue One's a very fun movie. I love the grittiness to it. I think that's my favorite part about Rogue One is that it feels like a war movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I remember kind of like the build up to Rogue One, and everyone's saying that like this was going to be the Saving Private Ryan of Star Wars films. And I think it really lives up to that. And, just like the rawness and how emotionally taxing war can be. And, seeing what the rebellion believes in and what Jin believes in, and like kind of that, in the beginning, that little conflict they have. And just like seeing the relationship between the characters, like characters we didn't even know before this movie started. It also helps, if you've read the book Catalyst. I made a point to read Catalyst before I saw this movie, and it's a really good supplemental book to read if you're looking for a little bit of backstory of Krennic and Galen and what their relationship was like, and the construction of the Death Star and all that kind of fun stuff. But Stephen, one question I wanted to ask you is, how does this movie rank in your, I don't want to say definitive ranking, but in your general ranking of Star Wars movies? Where does this film sit?
It definitely has to be in the middle, like the median. Probably somewhere between 4 and ranking as in 4 and 7.
So is it before 4 or after 4 in the ranking? Like, is it better than 4 or worse than 4?
It's worse than 4.
Okay, so it's behind 4. All right.
Right.
So 7, Rogue One, 4. Is that what you're saying?
It's so like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then Rogue One is behind that.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Jackson, what about you?
This sits lower, not because it's like I don't like it. It's more because the stuff above it is the stuff that like it captures me right away.
Yeah.
Whereas this one is the first one where I'm kind of like, yeah, like it's fun. Like I'm gonna defend it and like talk about it and love it and appreciate it, but it's not like it's so different. It's a very different movie. So like, yeah, it just kind of sits in this like middle. It's probably directly right in the middle of just where I view the movies.
Cool. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Jackson. It is very close to the middle. I've never been one to, the ranking of Star Wars movies to me really doesn't mean much because even the worst Star Wars movie on my list is still great in my opinion. Like I just love Star Wars. So I think that, this lands somewhere after and before, like it's maybe in between something like one of the original trilogy movies and one of the prequels. I mean, it's probably in the latter half of my my ranking because I know the sequel trilogy is really far up there because it's just something I really connected to. But for this film, it's somewhere in the middle for sure. But Stephen? What was your first experience with this movie? Like, I know we saw it together. What was that experience like seeing this movie for the first time?
I remember going into it very excited. I remember us looking at each other most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like, oh, a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And then, boom, no crawl.
You're in. Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, I see what they're doing. And then they introduce us, they give an introduction, and then they give us the Rogue One.
The iMovie title. Yeah.
The iMovie title, right.
Yeah.
I'm just like, okay, yeah, sure. They're just giving
throwing us in there.
Throwing us in there, yep. Not really much happened after that. I remember us when I was going over to you, and I'm like, is this Mustafar? Is this where Krennic's going?
Yeah, Vader's castle. And we're like, what the heck is this? Vader's freaking castle? What's
like,
going on here?
I thought that was lore, and then they actually brought it into cinema. I'm like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And as soon as Krennic and Vader stopped talking, I'm like, okay, this is the only Vader we're going to see. Well, we were wrong about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because towards the end, I'm like, I thought we were going to see more Vader. Oh.
Yeah.
That scene.
Yeah, okay. I remember like this, like 2016 Rogue One era was such a prime, iconic era for Star Wars in general. And just, I remember being, I think it was my freshman year in college, and I came home from my college town just to see this with you guys. And man, just nothing beats going to see Star Wars on the big screen. Nope. Jackson, what about you? What was your first experience with this movie?
I know I saw it with friends, but I don't remember exactly when or how, or I don't know if I saw this when it came out or maybe like the week after. And because I think the person I went with had seen it already, because I distinctively remember like right before like the big Vader scene looking over and him giving me like the eyes and like the big smile on his face, like he knew what was coming, but I had no clue. And yeah, that's mainly what I remember from that experience, but I don't know much details about it.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but for some reason, every single Star Wars theater experience I have, I remember it so vividly because, every Star Wars movie, there's like a year or a year plus of just speculation and anticipation.
Right. I remember being excited for it and like speculating with friends and like figuring out what was it going to be. And
yeah, I don't think I've speculated and, speculated and anticipated and like had as many predictions and tried to figure out what's happening more than I did with either The Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. Like one of those two, I think equally. But this one was definitely like, I didn't know what to expect. So I just went into it with open arms and ready to accept whatever this movie handed me. So, I think that's really important with this movie as well. But let's kind of get into the guts and just kind of go play by play with this movie. So it starts out, we're on Galen's farm with Krennic's ship coming in, and we kind of get a sense of this unease and this, you know, this sense of tension between Krennic and Galen, and we get to meet the whole Urso family. Stephen, what is your interpretation of Krennic and Galen's relationship, and also Galen's relationship with his family, and like what he has to hide from his family?
So, just off the bat, you can tell that Galen is not surprised that Orson is there. He's just like,
You
yeah,
found me.
yeah, you found me. It's just, yeah, it's a peaceful life. Yeah. I'm not coming back with you. He's like, I already know why you're here.
Yeah.
And Krennic's just like, why? You can become a hero to the Empire. Why do you choose this life?
Yeah. You'll be treated like a god if you join us. Like,
Exactly. It's just
what's your
like
deal, man?
any other guy would just feel like, oh yeah, sure, I'll be a hero to the Empire. And then Galen's just like, no, I know what you guys are doing. We were on the verge of greatness, this close.
Yeah.
And he's just like, no, no, don't care.
Farming, a man of your talents. Yeah. Jax, what about you? What's kind of your interpretation of that whole opening sequence?
I love like wartime like political jargon. I love those those talks of things, and I love how instantly it was the relationship between Galen and Krennic, and just kind of how like you could tell instantly they used to be old friends, and now there's like this professional like facade behind it. It's like seeing an ex-girlfriend. You gotta like act cool about it, you know.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah, actually.
It kind of is because, because Galen is an ex-Imperial, and, it basically is like this, awkward seeing your ex-girlfriend in public kind of thing. I think I'm the only one here who has read Catalyst, but it is a great, great prequel to Rogue One, and kind of gets into Galen and Krennic's relationship, and, why they're doing the things they're doing, and how intelligent Krennic and Galen actually are as a team, and that kind of stuff. And that's I think it really adds to the story in this movie if you have read that book, and if you've gotten really deep into the relationships between them. But yeah, for sure. So I think that going on, how do you feel about Stephen? How do you feel about Jyn and her relationship with Saw Gerrera, and her kind of growing up almost basically being raised by Saw Gerrera?
Saw Gerrera is a father figure or stepfather figure to Jyn. Pretty much just, she was just like, Galen was just like, okay, yeah, you know what to do. Yeah, stay there. Saw's gonna come for you, and he's pretty much gonna take care of you. We never really get to see the actual emotional connections that we see, or the bonds that they actually produce with each other until Jyn sees Saw again. And then they have like this bicker, like it's just like a family quarrel. Like we know they've actually had some history with each other, and it's just the fact that like, oh yeah, it's you. So and so, blah blah blah. Like, I'm mad at you.
Yeah. How did you feel about the emotional weight behind the death of Lyra, and how Galen was trying to convince Krennic that Lyra was already dead, and we get that reveal.
I love that
Krennic
joke.
gets that
Here
reveal.
comes Lyra back from the dead.
Back from the dead.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you kind of feel? Did that moment work for you when she actually did die?
So I really don't think there was really much, because they were really focused more on. I think they would have done like They would have done like some talk between her and Galen right before she died. But mostly, I think it's just the fact that like the emotional connection is there. It's like Galen left the Empire to take care of. Oh, what's her name again? I forget. I'm sorry.
Jen?
No, his wife.
Lyra.
Yes. He left the Empire for Lyra and Jyn.
Yeah.
And to say that she's dead is going to protect her, to make sure she's not leveraged for anything, for them to actually threaten her, and for Galen to come back to the Empire.
What about the actual moment whenever Lyra gets shot and killed? Did that was there any emotional weight behind that moment?
I'm going to say no, because otherwise they would have focused on it more, and I would have had more of an emotional connection with it. But no, honestly, I think it's just the fact that her last words, her saying, "You'll never win, you won't take him." Honestly, I think it's just the fact that's something we've seen before.
Yeah, she went out fighting, and I think that's what counts. Jackson, what about you? With Lyra dies, Jin gets away, and Saw goes and rescues her. What do you kind of think about that beat?
I think in Lyra's death, I have more emotional weight whenever she's like charging them and pulls the gun on them.
Yeah,
like she's like I don't care. Like I'll kill someone. She's like I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's not necessarily it's more for the character development of Jin and just kind of understanding her quick background of in that moment, she thought she lost both parents, so it's kind of that character build. But I think it's funny how like Krennic knows instantly because he probably knows how important Lyra was to Galen already. So the fact that she's just like dead, Krennic's like, no, she's not. Like, shut up. Like, nah, I'm not stupid. Like, don't talk like that. Like, you literally would do anything for her. Like,
you wouldn't just be an innocent farmer on a desolate planet if Lyra died.
Yeah,
it's as he said. It's just like, oh, how disappointing. Search the house.
Yeah. He's like immediately like, yeah. But kind of moving on in the story, we get to this flash forward, and we see Jin on this Imperial transport, and we're cutting between that and kind of this mission with Cassian Andor. The first time we're meeting Cassian Andor on the Ring of Kafrene. And we get this really brutal moment of, kind of this guy that's supposedly on Andor's team, and he just murders him in cold blood in an alley in this city. Stephen, what do you kind of think about that moment where, he's kind of Cassian Andor's being found out by the stormtroopers, and in a panic, he just kind of has to kill this guy. Yeah.
So when I first saw this film, I'm like, okay, they're getting out of there. He's just like, everything's gonna be okay. Bam! I'm just like, okay, he's doing what he has to do to survive, but like, damn, that's cold.
Yeah.
But I know it's wartime, so he has to do anything. But it's just like, oh, you gave me the information. Okay, you're no longer useful to me. Okay, yeah. I don't care.
I think that says a lot about Cassian's character, and I think that it would benefit a lot from the Andor show and seeing, his kind of backstory and where he comes from. Jackson, what about you? How did you think, about that moment and Cassian as a character?
I will say this scene is pretty much what I expect the entire Andor series to be. It's just kind of like the dark trait of the rebellion. Yeah. I actually really like this scene a lot with meeting Cassian and just kind of like how ruthless he is and just kind of, like you said, just he needs to do whatever he needs to do to get the job done. Like that's his focus. And you can tell he's a very like determined person about that. Usually through this whole movie, he's really determined about like his mission and just like any possible way he can to complete it.
Yeah. And he's kind of like, dog, the rebellion trusts me. And he's got this, he's been in this fight since he was 6 years old. So all he's ever really known is the rebellion. And all he's ever really known is, fighting for this cause.
And all he's ever really seen is like the darkness that he's essentially just like created a career out of.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, like I said before, that would benefit a lot from seeing what comes out of that Andor show, and what it'll be interesting to see what is revealed in the Andor show compared to what is shown to us in Rogue One, and how differently we look at his character after seeing the Andor show.
I agree.
So that'll be cool to see a lot. And then, of course, we're introduced to, we're on Jeddah, and, Bodhi Rook wants to see Saw Gerrera because he has a message for him, and he has this message for Saw Gerrera. Stephen, let's bounce it back to you first. What is kind of your impression of Bodhi Rook and his introduction to this movie?
Your basic bad guy turned good guy scenario. He's just there. He's just like, oh, I have information. I want to turn to the good side. I'm sick of the Empire. And also the fact of the relationship that he probably developed with Galen when he was on Eru?
Edu.
Excuse me, thank you. When he was on Edu, and he was just like, yeah, screw the Empire. Yeah, definitely, let's go for it. And then no one trusts him whatsoever. He's just like, oh yeah, spy. Yeah, that'll happen during wartime. Yeah, spies are everywhere.
Jackson, what about you? How do you feel about Bodhi Rook and his kind of introduction to this movie?
I think Bodhi Rook's a very pure character, but I also think it's really funny about how this very anxiety of a person got through the Imperial Academy and is a pilot for the Empire, even if it is for a science lab.
Right.
It's almost like he knew he wanted to defect, but as soon as he defected, he regretted it, and he was like, "Oh crap!"
He was like, "Oh, this is a lot. I didn't need to do this.
This is a lot." Yeah, and just kind of his nervous persona, and he can't speak without stuttering,
of just being hunted,
Yeah, and I can't imagine what he has gone through, and getting out of the Empire and making that decision and making that choice. We always talk about how Star Wars is about the choices we make, and how those choices define us. And I think that says a lot about Bodhi, and the way he chooses to help the rebellion and use the information he has to help the rebellion, which is super vital to this movie especially. But we kind of, after we flash forward, we get that great scene on, I forgot which planet it is, but we see Jyn on that Imperial barge being transported, and the rebels kind of come and take her away.
It's like Watobi or something.
Something like that, yeah. I know everybody who knows the name of that planet is screaming into their iPhone right now. But Stephen, what do you think about this introduction to adult Jyn? And we were talking about how she's in this kind of this prison cell with these 9 to 5 stormtroopers who are kind of just another day at work, and they kind of get overtaken by the Rebel Alliance.
So I'm actually going to steal a quote from the Empire, just rebel scum.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's just, if she's on this Imperial barge, actually, she's done treacherous things. She's actually committed treason. And that's just their whole view of the Rebel Alliance, just rebel scum. Do anything for anything.
What about that great introduction to K2SO?
Congratulations, you're being rescued.
Yeah.
Do not resist. Just wait a second, Imperial droids helping them? Oh, okay, he has some humor. Okay, this is a side character we'll get to love and enjoy.
Yeah, for sure. Jackson, what about you? The whole adult Jyn Erso, and we get to meet K2SO for the first time.
So I have to admit something about this. I think early on in the film, Felicity Jones is her acting's really forced. I think early it stops pretty much up until when they're at Edu, but like the beginning couple scenes with her, like I just think are really rough. I just think like I don't even know if it's just her accent feels forced. And I know that it isn't, and I know that it's just kind of the way she's speaking, but there's just something about the delivery of her lines that throws me off. So early scene Jin Urso is very like jarring to me because like I think the reason they cast Felicity Jones was to be the hopeful icon and like legend that Jin Urso becomes, rather than kind of the scoundrel that she's supposed to be originally. She follows a very Han Solo arc of like the
Yeah.
scoundrel to like the hero. Um, I can't remember. It might be Alphabet Squadron, I think, but there is a character in Alphabet Squadron who essentially worships Jin Urso and just kind of like essentially just like that she became this character's like motivation to join the rebellion in the New Republic because it
Hmm.
was like the dirtiest kind of dirt could even turn around and have a heart of gold essentially, and that's what I liked about Jin Urso.
Yeah. She's very, this movie is very gritty, and I think that says a lot about even the characters in this movie, like Jin and that whole that rebel slash Rogue One squadron. Um, but I think what you're saying about her performance, I think the moment that she finally settles into the character is that moment whenever she's on Jeddah with Saw, and we get Galen's message to
I
to
agree.
Jin. And I think that that is the moment where she's reacting to seeing her father for the first time in probably 20 years. And she has all these emotions building up, and she realizes that her father didn't just leave her behind. Like, her father was captured, and he's you know he's not there to work in the interests of the empire. He's there to work because he's forced to. So he does all he can to, work in the interest of, the rebellion and anti-empire, and especially with creating that weakness in the Death Star. But you know, kind of. But before we get into that a little bit, we get this battle on Jeddah where we finally meet characters like Baze Malbus and Chirrut Emwe, and these great are some of our favorite characters in this movie. At least me and Steven. Steven, what are your thoughts on Baze and Chirrut, as well as where this scene goes on Jeddah and Jeddah City and their fight against the Empire and stormtroopers on this planet?
So, Baze and Chirrut are. I don't think they're really like part of Saw's team. If anything, they're just part of. They're just there.
Yeah.
They're just living there. They're technically, you could call them rebels. Like, they're not part of the Empire. But I think our introduction of them is something that we would really see of side characters that are just part of this group that's non authority. Like, they're for the good of the galaxy. They're for pretty much anything that's anything, everything the Empire stands for. They're pretty much everything they stand against for. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think, whenever I was watching this today, I was saying that it feels like Baze and Chirrut are very anti-establishment in general,
Right.
especially with Chirrut, being this, not really being able to wield the Force, but being very Force sensitive and Force aware. And I think that's really important to think about and recognize with Chirrut's character. But Jackson, what about you? What is your thoughts on Baze and Chirrut and their relationship, and then kind of going on to this battle on Jeddah City?
I really loved the heartbreaking connection that they hold of where Baze is. They were both like, you can tell they were both probably friends when they were both Guardians of the Wills, and it's like this sad like melancholy like I'm trying to think of the word I want to use. It's like Baze has no like faith anymore. He's just kind of lost all hope, and in his eyes, he's just taking care of Chirrut because Chirrut is this blind old man, whereas Chirrut is taking care of Baze because Baze is this broken, like, lost person just kind of wandering the streets of this galaxy. And it's just this back and forth. They take care of each other. And I love that they use that to essentially fight what they both lost.
Yeah, I think that's great. That's a great perspective because, I've always kind of thought that Baze really isn't... I don't think he really, in the beginning of meeting him, he's not really someone who believes in the rebellion and the cause of the rebellion. I think he's just there because he's just there because Chirrut is there, and he kind of has this, this domestic partnership, if you will, with Chirrut, and like he feels that he always has to be by his side. One, to help him because he's blind, but also two, because I feel like he's almost found solace in Chirrut, in their relationship, and Chirrut being so in tune with this mysterious force and being on Jedha. It really all makes sense if you think about it. It
probably gives him like a sense of purpose of being able to take care of Chirrut, whereas Chirrut's purpose is trying to like rekindle the like flame of faith of the Force that Baze once had.
Yeah, and then we soon find out that Chirrut does not need any taking care of because he can take care of himself.
Very capable, yeah.
Indeed.
Stephen, what do you think about whenever it's kind of Baze, Chirrut, Jin, and Cassian and K2SO against basically the Empire and Stormtroopers on Jedha City?
Oh, where to begin with the heightened senses that like Chirrut just looking around, he hears the footsteps, he hears the finger moving on the trigger, and as soon as the blaster fire starts going, Chirrut just goes off, starts just batting them with a stick one by one, just Ip Man style, and just the joke he cracked, he's like, stabs the stormtrooper in the foot. Oh, is your foot okay? Doesn't care, just bats him, just immediately. And then as soon as you think it's over with, more stormtroopers just come in. And then Bae's just like, oh, I got these guys. He's like, I could have handled them. He's like, I just saved you.
Yeah, the way he unleashes on the stormtroopers is so great. Jackson, what about you with Chirrut and Baze's battle style on Jedha City?
I love the fastness of Chirrut's fighting style of just
it's
like
very
watching it's like watching kung fu movies. And I think it's funny how like Baze on the other hand is more kind of like the heavy brute, and he's got the big machine gun and whatnot. And I love when they get captured by Saw's people and they put the bag over Chirrut. He goes, "Are you kidding me? I'm blind.
Are you kidding me? I'm blind."
Yeah. And I love how after he's done wrecking shop, he just sits down on a stormtrooper corpse.
Yeah, he just chills.
He just takes a seat on top of a stormtrooper. I love it. But yeah, kind of going forward, this is right after this is the first moment that we actually see the Death Star in action. And, it's not at its full potential, but we see just an inkling of the capabilities of the Death Star. Stephen, what was kind of your, overall reaction to what kind of damage the Death Star can do even in its early stages?
So back in 77, we first saw just, you make fire when ready, and then just a laser beam, gone. Planet gone.
Pop Alderaan.
And then just, they're like, oh yeah, just do, what was it, one?
Yeah,
it was
single
like
reactor.
One phase. Single reactor, thank you. My God, I keep forgetting all these terms. They're like single reactor fire, and just able to wipe out an entire city. And as Krennic says, he's like, oh, it's beautiful. And I'm just like, wow, this thing can really do more than I thought it could.
Yeah. Yeah. Jackson, what about you?
I think it's funny how it's upside down when they do it. I just think it's funny what it is.
Yeah, we were talking like watching the movie, like, is everybody just like
Looking at it from upside down,
You may
like,
like that.
smile, ready, like.
with their hands hanging down? Yeah.
I really love I love how modern, like, I guess cinema and just kind of like modern takes on the Death Star really do a good job at like in capturing how scary it is. Because like you look at A New Hope and it's just like it's the establishing shot for the boardroom scene, and they're just kind of like, here it is. And then throughout the movie, you have to figure out like, oh, like this big ball is the superstation that they keep talking about. Like I understand now. Whereas like in this, it's got really like massive cinema, it's the shadows cascading over, Star Destroyers, and they're implementing the big gun into it. It just kind of like peeks over the horizon. Oh, the shot of it eclipsing the sun's one of my
eclipsing
favorites.
the sun.
God, yeah.
Oh yeah. So good.
And I love that, and like even in like the A New Hope novelization, they don't refer to the Death Star by name until Luke and the gang finds it. Like
I love that.
It's just the battle station, and even in the boardroom scene, it's just the battle. It's this big, massive battle station that we have so much power for. They have no idea what it is.
I hear the New Hope novelization is kind of wacky.
It's very full of information because it's just kind of the first like script draft that he just transformed. So it's got scenes that aren't in the movie. It's got conversations and like moments just with people that like you like don't happen like normally in the pacing. So it's very dense of a read, but it kind of adds this weird little like perspective to A New Hope, and just kind of like, I don't know, there's just specific details about like, especially Luke, like there's a part in the beginning where like Luke and Biggs have a conversation and just kind of like about Biggs like leaving to join the rebellion. It's just, it's very detailed rich.
Yeah, I remember that deleted scene. I'm going to have to check out that New Hope novelization.
You can find the entire trilogy at like anywhere. I bought mine paperback $10 at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah, I'll have to pick it up on Amazon or something, because the only ones I've read are Revenge of the Sith, and I think I read most of the Force Awakens novelization. But
I think I remember reading actually 4, 5, and 6, like hardback paper copy, like when I was like maybe 8 or 10, like back in grade school. Like I read like.
So basically, you don't remember a thing about them.
No, I do not whatsoever. I just remember looking at the hardback paper copy. I'm just like, cool, this is Star Wars. I'm going to read this.
Yeah, they're a fun thing because the entire, at least my entire book of all 3 movies is only like 500-600 pages.
Right.
Yeah, because they're kind of like YA length.
Yeah, pretty much. I think A New Hope's the longest one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, cool. Kind of moving on here, back to Rogue One. All that kind of happens, and we see Jeddah City destroyed, and they kind of get sent on this mission to a planet called Edu, this big rainy planet. And originally, Jin thinks they're kind of there to, see what's going on and everything. And Cassian, to Jin's demise, wants to murder her father. And she does not know this. And there was a line that I actually caught for the first time watching today of Chirrut, but when they land on Edu, and he basically says that, he's about to kill. And Jin's like, what are you talking about? He's like, and Chirrut's like, well, there's this dark force surrounding him, and that really only happens when, there's someone who is about to kill. And that was the first time I noticed that line. I guess that's just, me kind of being, caught up in the moment, but that line is so powerful. And, this dynamic of Jin and Cassian kind of having 2 different ideas of what is even going on in this scene is so great. Stephen, what is kind of your, overall thoughts in reaction to the whole mission on Edu, and we know that Galen's scientists get shot and that whole platform gets blown up, and this is eventually what happens is Galen's death comes. What is kind of your reaction to that whole sequence?
So mostly it's just the fact that it's like, oh, your current espionage mission. It's like, oh yeah, cool, yeah, go save this man. Top brass wants him put on trial in front of the Senate, and then the head guy's like, no, we want you to take him out.
He's like, hey, come here.
He's like,
hey, forget all that crap you heard inside. Go kill that man.
Just like, yeah, he's done. But as soon as they go out there, Cassian has multiple chances, as is said in the film, as he says, to kill him, and he doesn't. So we see this. Is it possibly for Jin? Is it possibly just for see where it's going to go? And then eventually the whole X-Wing squadron comes in, pretty much blows up
guns
the entire...
blazing.
Guns blazing.
Anyway, yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. Either way. But the emotional blow that it is to Jin, I think ultimately she's just like, I'm for this cause. My father was the last thing that kept me from actually just not giving a crap about anything. So she's like, okay, I'm on board. Let's take these guys out. Let's take the Empire out. Let's save it.
Yeah. And I know we're not on quotes yet, but I think what you say about, saving it, and whenever Jedha's being destroyed and we witness the death of Saw Gerrera, and one of his last lines of the movie is, save the rebellion, save the dream. And man, if that doesn't just encapsulate the theme of this movie,
that was going to be one of my favorite quotes. Was that?
It's so great. We'll get into quotes later. We'll dive deep into that kind of stuff later. But yeah, I think the mission on Edu is vital, and it changes tides for this movie, especially because that's kind of where I would say there's a tone shift, because I think Jin kind of finally finds out what the rebellion is really using her for. And, we get, again, that great moment on the bridge that she gets with her father for the last time. But, Jackson, what about you in the whole, the mission on Edu?
I think Edu's main importance is the, like you said, it's the change of the tides. It's the turning point for our main characters, especially like Cassian and Jin. It's Jin's spark of rebellion, motivation, and it's Cassian's realization of you can do this without having to be a complete monster. Because that's kind of his arc, is that he's this cold-blooded killer, and that's why I think the Andor series is going to be all that. Because he doesn't change until literally Edu, when he decides not to kill Galen. He tells Jin, he's like, I abandoned my mission too. He was like, don't worry. He was like, we're both in the gutter right now. But he's like, he doesn't say it outright, but he's like, he understands that what he did was for the good. And I think that's when he gets in Jin's face and tells her this is all he's known, it's Jin realizing that even though he's grown up in this horrible life of just war, he still realized that it wasn't fully right to kill Galen, especially knowing Galen played different teams and all that. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is and that was kind of Jin's realization, is that, she understood that Cassian gave something up, even though it didn't go the way that they necessarily wanted to. So Jin takes that as she kind of devotes herself to finishing the work and at least establishing Galen's mission of sabotaging the Death Star.
Yeah, I think this moment and this sequence gives Jin a sense of understanding, she, at first she's very defensive of her father and why would you try to kill my father? And she kind of realizes that, oh crap, he's kind of instrumental in all of this. And, he's kind of the reason there is a Death Star.
Like everybody else in the last 45 minutes hasn't been saying Galen Erso's name like he wasn't of importance.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that she's at this weird crossroads of, yeah, it's my father. And, it's awful that, he basically died in my arms, but I kind of have to carry out my father's mission of destroying the Empire. Like he laid the foundation, and I have to carry that out. Like she feels that is her duty now that, now that her father died, there's no one else that could do this than Jin. And I think, that's really important to realize. Kind of moving on a little bit here, we get to this really great moment and scene on Mustafar. We see Mustafar for the first time since 2005, and I think it's looking as good as ever. Mm-hmm. And one thing I do hate about this sequence, and if you disagree, please tell me, but when Krennic's ship lands, we get this really dumb, stupid music cue, and it sounds very like futuristic electron, like it's so weird, and it's not Star Wars at all, but that's like the only moment that's taken out of me music wise. We'll get into music later, but kind of going back to my original point, Vader's castle, it was such an iconic Legends location, and we finally realized that Vader did have a lair on Mustafar, and we learned in the comics that he did. But what was kind of your initially seeing that Vader's castle is a thing, and we first get introduced to Vader as Vader without the suit for the first time? What is kind of Stephen, what is your reaction there?
So I'll go back to when it was you and me in the theater, and I look over to you, I'm like, is this Mustafar? Is this Vader's castle? I thought there was one mentioned in the lore. And you're like, no, it can't be. And we're like, oh, it is. It is Vader's castle. And him seeing in the back of the tank, I'm just like, he's still recovering from his battle with Obi-Wan. And just out of context, I find it ironic that his castle is on the very place where he became the very character that he is now.
I think that's intentional.
Well, it's where Anakin Skywalker eventually died, and then Darth Vader was born.
I think that's where Anakin / Vader feels the most pain and anguish and anger is on Mustafar.
Probably fuels his rage.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just about to say that. Yeah, it fuels him more because he recollects. It's just like going back to the one place where I was defeated. Oh, it's like all this rage and anger.
That was the death of Anakin Skywalker, where he is. Yeah.
Right. But yeah, as soon as he steps out, he's just like, Director Krennic. I'm like, cool, this is James Earl Jones still. Mm-hmm. Cool, this is awesome. And I see the red tint in his eyepiece. I'm like, okay, cool. It's also going back to when, this is not Rogue One, but going to Rebels. Cool, this is the Rebels Vader.
Yeah, we get that. I know in Rebels we get that really... on Vader's character, we get that intense kind of red glow in Vader's eyes to kind of make him... Well, I think we get that in the original trilogy, right?
So this costume is based off of it is like to a T detailed of the A New Hope costume.
Yeah.
And it's the robes cover the breathing apparatus. He's got the cape over the shoulder. It's to the point that they'd even put finger smudges on the base of the helmet. To copy A New Hope, but the Rebels Vader is a mix of that and the original Ralph McQuarrie design of Vader with the really pointed down tip of the helmet, and he looks like he's angry rather than kind of just being this I guess the helmet that he is now, I was reading stuff and it's the costume department spent 3 solid months forming just the exact details they needed just to put on specific pieces of the costume.
Yeah. Wow. That's crazy. Jackson, what about you in this whole Vader's castle sequence and getting into, Vader and seeing him without we see him without the armor for the first time, and we get the Krennic encounter. What's kind of your reaction there?
I love Back to Tank Vader. I love that little like that
Yeah.
little intro of just seeing like Vader just like he's still like you said he's still healing. He's still trying to kind of regain himself and see I love this like version of Vader's castle because like Legends Vader's castle it isn't on Mustafar. It's on Vajun.
Right.
And it's a like acid rain planet. Big fan of Bast Castle. I love Vader's OG castle.
Yeah.
But I like how like we said, this is just the place that like fuels his rage. It's just this place of hatred that he's built, and like I wouldn't even be shocked if it was on that hill, you know, if it was on that little mound that he ended that fight with Obi-Wan.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything, but I don't know how far you've gotten into Skywalker, A Family at War. But
No, I haven't. I keep wanting to, but I work so much now.
yeah, just you'll
wait.
know.
Okay, cool.
It gets
Hell
into
yeah.
it.
Is this a book?
Yeah,
It is a book.
It just came out.
It's like it came out like last week. It is basically like the Star Wars Skywalker family biography.
It's like an in-lore biography.
Like the backstory of like Shmi and Anakin, like before we even meet them in the Phantom Menace, up until the ending of the entire saga. It goes through
With
the entire
Rey and Kylo and Luke and all that. Yeah.
It's basically a Star Wars biography. It's great. I'm halfway through it.
It's killer.
Great.
It's very beautifully
Oh, hell, I
it's
need to read
very
this.
very beautifully written.
I need to read this.
But continuing on, like I love the interaction with Krennic because I like how Vader like has a say in the political stuff that happens in the Empire. Like they have to
Some
go
of
to
the
Vader.
Senate and
Yeah, like they have to go to Vader in order to get like in touch with the Emperor, and like Vader's just not necessarily the person you would think would be having to deal with that.
yeah,
Well-
and I think he gets a lot of that from Padme.
I agree. Yes, he's definitely learned how to at least like to handle and kind of form
How to
and
navigate politically.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how he finishes off with that dad joke. Be careful not to choke on your aspirations, Director.
When we were watching that, I was like, get ready for the Vader pulling those Anakin dad
The dad
jokes.
pun. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I love it.
I was gonna say, oh yeah, Vader's I would say is just like, as we probably all know, it's just the enforcer. Honestly, he's the middleman to get to the Emperor, because like really it's like, okay, someone has to talk to Vader, and the Vader's like, okay, I'll talk to the Emperor, okay, blah blah blah, because I'm really the only one that talks to him pretty much outside the Senate. So it's just like, yeah, to get to him you gotta get through me. So
And we can tell that, you know, Vader is still in this fresh state of pain and regret. And he's still kind of struggling with being Vader in this moment. I mean, it is, you know, right before A New Hope, but we can still get those notes and essences of, you know, a little bit of Annie in there.
how so?
You know, I would just say that the way he acts, and especially with that dad joke, I think that kind of brings it home for me on kind of, you know, he's choking Krennic while saying, be careful not to choke on your aspirations. That's very
classic Anakin Skywalker.
It's very classic Anakin, and it's also something that like you would hear between Anakin and Obi-Wan.
It's not something you would expect to go to your friends and be like, did you hear what Darth Vader did to Director Krennic? He choked him out and made a joke. Like, am I the only one who finds that odd? Like, I don't think Vader does that. And everyone's like, what are you talking about?
I would also argue that there isn't really a point in Vader's life where he is not struggling with what it means to be Vader, and, you know, what it does to him as a being.
Yeah.
It's so crucial, especially in this movie, and especially we'll get into the end there when we get there. But yeah, I really love this moment in Vader's castle that we see for the first time, and his dynamic with Krennic. And, you know, we just know from the beginning that Krennic is just terrified to be there. He's like, do I have to go inside? Can't I just send him a text message or something? Yeah, he's very, very uneased by being in the presence of Vader, which, you know, he should be. But, you know, and I think there are some deleted scenes in which we see Vader kind of on the Death Star and all these different things, which we didn't end up seeing, which we saw in the teaser trailer, I think. But kind of moving on, we realize that, the Rogue One squadron is told that the Death Star plans are on the planet of Scarif, and they need to retrieve them so they can, figure out what their next move is. And they depart for Scarif, and I just love the build-up to getting on Scarif and their last interaction with Baze, Chirrut, Bodhi, Andor, all of those people. It's kind of their last interaction before they go into this final battle for the fate of the galaxy, which is so powerful and so much fun to watch. I mean, me and Stephen were just having a blast watching this earlier, but
yeah,
Steven,
I was too, actually. Like,
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're talking about. I just had a ton of fun watching that entire sequence.
Yeah, it pumps you up.
Yeah.
And it fills you with so much hope. And I think that says a lot because, the rebellion in this moment is filled with so much hope, and there's finally, a path to victory here that they've never had before.
Right.
But Stephen, kind of throwing the ball towards you. What is kind of your thoughts and reaction to the beginning of this third act and getting on Scarif and gearing up for this final battle?
So we're talking pre-battle, right?
Yeah, we're gearing up. We're gearing
pre-battle. Okay, so I think it's pretty much whenever they're in the chamber and they're all discussing. It's like, do we go to war or no? Do we stay behind? Do we just stay in the shadows or what? Honestly, I think it's just Jin saying, it's like, rebellions are built on hope. We have hope. Yeah. There's still time. We can still do this. Like, come on, let's go. And I think that build up whenever Jin lost her father, she's now into this. She's fully part of the rebellion. She's for this. She wants to see them crushed. So honestly, I mean, just her words really inspired a lot. Especially with Admiral
Radis.
Forgive me, what's his? Radis. Thank you. He was with her all the way. He was just like, yeah, we need to prep fighters. We need to go. We need to go. We need to fight.
Well, the fact that Radis was there before anyone else, ready to fight, he's just ready to go. I love that so much about Radis. Jackson, what about you? And kind of, your thoughts on the rebellion's choice to go and get these plans and take on the Empire themselves.
Well, I like how, Jin really she motivates people into kind of the real reason why people joined the rebellion was to take those risks to fight what you believed in. And it got to the point that the rebellion was playing too safe because they were trying to kind of be a little political about it, that Jin was able to kind of form that little, mercenary group to go off and fight. And it literally just pulled the entire rebellion with them to where it was like these people were connected by a string, and the Rogue One team left and the entire rebellion just had to fall right in with them. And that's when just this literally just devolves into chaos, and just it's the beginning of the war. It's what broke out and started everything.
Yeah. And it says a lot about the bravery of a lot of the characters in this movie, and the way that Jin and Cassian and that whole group are just so ready to put their lives on the line for the rebellion, and the sake of the galaxy and the hope of the galaxy kind of lies in their hands. I was kind of telling this to Steve when we were watching, is that moment when she finally gets the plans and she's uploading them, I was like, this is the state of the galaxy in Jin's hands right now. Mm-hmm. And if this doesn't go as planned, the galaxy is basically screwed.
Yeah.
So it kind of goes to show how important this mission is and the stakes that are present. And, obviously we know where it goes, but we kind of get into this big climactic battle on Scarif, and we got people spread out. We got a ground battle, we got a space battle, we have Jin and Cassian, and then actually trying to complete the mission. Steven, what do you think is your favorite part of this battle on Scarif, and where it goes from here?
Oh, I probably have to say hands down is when Amaranth is like, call a hammerhead cruiser in here. I have an idea. So the cruiser comes in and just rams this down Star Destroyer, and then just completely it runs into it, and they're just like, yeah, full throttle, let's get this thing going. And as soon as it crashes into each other, you get that dramatic music. You get that emotional music that you were telling me about.
Yeah, we'll get into the music in a second. Yeah.
That whenever it just crashes into the shield station, and then just the shield's down, it's just the fact that, like, there it is. There's their hope.
Yeah.
There it is.
What about you, Jackson?
I really love the X-wing fighting in this movie. I think this has some of the most riveting and exciting space battles. This space battle is very intense. I just think it's, and I love how it just flows straight into the gritty ground war of why I love Vietnam. Have you guys ever watched? I love how scared.
Y'all ever seen Vietnam?
Yeah, right. Yeah, I love this was really the grittiness kind of at full capacity and full percentage of just it's sandy, it's dirty, it's just horrible warfare, and it's just there's explosions happening, there's mud and dead people everywhere, and it's just absolute hell and chaos. On top of it's also happening in the stars as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Vietnam.
I think
Space Vietnam, dude. Scarif has it's them like running in the water with the big palm trees, and I was like, wow, I love Apocalypse Now.
It's like as soon as the X-Wings comes in, like CCR starts playing.
Well, dude, there's even the chopper gunner that's shooting the laser
with the like the little
monkey guy.
The monkey guy. Yeah, I'm just like CCR is definitely playing during this scene. But anyway, going on.
Well, I was just gonna say, there is so much that was in the trailers of this movie that didn't make it in.
Mm-hmm.
Especially that great shot in the trailers of Krennic walking through like the shoreline, and he's like in the water walking to the shore, and like the stormtroopers are following him. We just see his cape flowing in the background. I would have loved to see something like that. And there's also that shot of whenever, Jin is on the edge of that bridge trying to go transfer the information of the Death Star plans to Admiral Raddus. In the trailer, when she's on the edge of that bridge, a big TIE fighter comes up and is about to it kind of approaches her.
Oh, that's
that
cool.
would have been really cool to see too. But enough with the what ifs. But I think my favorite moment of this entire battle, honestly, is how Chirrut and Baze and that kind of group, how they all go out, and what each one of them do is, it kind of plants a seed for what will happen next. And, we have, Chirrut goes through and I want the force is with me. And man, if that doesn't speak to just how Chirrut is as a character, and him going out ready to sacrifice himself like everybody is, and just to turn on a satellite so she can transfer the Death Star plans. Like, that is freaking wild.
Rip the first dude that went, I'm going, and turned and got immediately shot
by a Death Trooper.
Yeah. And I think, I think that the deaths that have the most emotional weight to me are Chirrut and K2SO. And can we just talk about for a second how much of a ballsy move it is to just kill every main character in this movie?
Yeah.
Isn't that freaking wild? Stephen, what was kind of your reaction when you realized, oh my gosh, they're all gonna die?
I'm just like, there's no way. And then the single reactor Death Star laser goes. I'm like, wow, they're all going to die. Like, this is unexpected. This is something you really wouldn't see from like a Star Wars film.
What was kind of your first inkling that, oh no, they're all going to die, aren't they? What was the first moment that you're like, oh crap?
Oh, as soon as Chirrut just bit the dust, I'm like, Yep,
Here it
basically gonna
goes.
follow him, and then yeah. Honestly, going on the sideline there, I honestly thought once Chirrut was walking out, he was like, "I'm one with the Force, Force with me. I'm one with the Force, Force with me." Like if someone moved, he would press a button, and then like a white lightsaber,
Oh, that'd be cool.
like kind of like a Shoto staff, would like appeared. Honestly, like I know it doesn't need to be Star Wars where it has a Jedi in it, but how cool would that have been? Just unexpectedly, just pushes a button and then just starts deflecting blaster fire.
Jackson, what about you? What's kind of your reaction to one, them killing every single main character that we've grown with in this movie, and what was your initial inkling that, oh crap, they're going to kill everyone?
My inkling was the second K2SO died, I was like, oh, they're gonna pick him off. I was like, just one by one, they're gonna take him out, and I like it because I remember like speculating before this movie came out and being like, oh, I remember having the conversation of like, oh, well, they're doing the Yavin 4 scene where they're giving the medals to Luke and Han. On the other side, they're giving medals to the Rogue One team for doing the secret mission. It was like, no, it was like they sacrificed everything for this. Like literally, like.
And I think that is a lot of the emotional weight of the movie is the sacrifice of all these characters.
Yeah, the heavy hitter and the heavy hope of like the rebellion having to literally finish this war just to like make amends for the people who sacrificed everything just alone for this.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, this mission is a suicide mission.
Absolutely.
There was basically no getting out of there alive, and the way they set this up was so genius. Of, you know, if you're going in and you're getting down and dirty with the Empire,
most likely not coming out.
You're not coming back, man. Sorry, but you're not, and we see that. And I think that really adds to what this movie is able to do when we're first meeting these characters, an hour and a half, 2 hours earlier. And then we feel something when we lose these characters and when they die. And especially with K2SO and, these characters that we've grown to love. And we don't expect to feel as much as we do when we see all these characters die so immediately. And that's just something that I've always commended this film for. While, a lot of people disagree and say that, I didn't really care about any of the characters and they die anyway. I've never subscribed to that notion at all. But a new character that kind of comes into the picture in this movie is Admiral Raddus. And I've talked about Admiral Raddus on the show before and how much I think he is an instrumental part of this movie and a part of Star Wars in general and the fate of the galaxy. Stephen, what are your thoughts on Admiral Raddus?
Definitely one of the one that just took me by surprise is honestly a very likable character. Like honestly, like as the notion you just said, like, oh, they all died, no one cares about any of these characters. I don't agree with that whatsoever. Especially with Admiral Raddus. Admiral Raddus is like one of the almost like, oh, this is just like Admiral Akbar is like of the same species, just another version of him, and we get that in Rogue One, and I just absolutely love this character.
What about you, Jackson?
So I'm gonna admit, I obviously knew Admiral Raddus. I guess I just didn't really. I didn't notice Admiral Raddus, not until this most recent watch. And I guess I understand everything that like you love about Raddus, like that I saw in this viewing of just kind of the spunk and like the light in his soul just to keep on fighting and just do not stop and literally just take every single chance you have against the Empire. I loved that inspiring just motivation that Raddus carried with him and his entire, fleet just all had and held.
Yeah, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head of why I love Raddus so much is, that spunk and undying trust in the rebellion and this, he always has this energy of, I know we can do it. I know we can do it. So let's do it. And And that's something I've always loved about Raditz, and that maneuver he created with the hammerheads and crashing those two Star Destroyers into each other.
I got an idea.
Yeah, he's like, hold on a second, I got an idea. I love that so much about Raditz. I got to get myself a Raditz Black Series figure. But I don't know if you're listening. I don't know if you knew this, that this is canon, but in The Last Jedi, that like main rebellion ship is that one, the big Mon Calamari cruiser in The Last Jedi, like the big main resistance cruiser, is called the Raditz.
It's awesome.
So yeah, that is the cruiser that Haldo jumps into and basically saves the resistance.
The Haldo maneuver
with one sweeping move, the Haldo maneuver. So fun fact for anybody out there, but here we go. Jumping in to what a lot would argue would be the climax of the movie is Vader's destruction on Tantive 4, almost Tantive 4, kind of like the hallway going into Tantive 4. But like, did you kind of know whenever Vader said, get together a boarding party, that this would tie in with A New Hope almost, within 10 minutes?
No, absolutely not.
Really?
Like, no.
You didn't catch on that quickly?
No, I was caught up in the moment whenever I was in the theater. Like, I could barely remember that line, like, prepare a boarding party. I'm like, oh, okay. It wasn't until the climax with Vader that
you're like, oh, this is where it's going?
This is where it's going, exactly.
What about you, Jackson? What was kind of your initial inkling that you're like, oh crap, here we go, we're going into A New Hope?
It's probably when you see the Tantive 4 soldiers, like, the guys with the big, like shield helmets on. Mm-hmm. That I was like, I see. I was like, it's gonna eventually, kind of merge its way into literally becoming like it's the perfect back-to-back feature is watching this and then immediately turning around and watching New Hope.
Because A New Hope takes place literally like 5 to 10 minutes after this movie.
You could take a pee break and then be still in current time.
Yeah, that's actually what we did after we went home and watched.
That's right. Yeah,
like we went home and then we're like, you want to watch A New Hope?
Yeah, I think we went back to my house and flipped on A New Hope, and it was so cool to see. But yeah, once we get to that horrific moment, and these kind of rebellion soldiers that were on board the Tantive 4 are trying to quickly get the Death Star plans back to the main crew on the ship, and Vader comes in and he just gets this moment of pure horror and this is basically a scene out of like a Saw movie, the way he digs into these rebellion soldiers. Stephen, what was your initial reaction experiencing this iconic moment in the theater?
In the theater, I'm like, I kept hearing about this moment of horror that Vader had from what you told me. I'm like, where's this moment of oh my god, this is happening? Like, you hear the like
the alarm blaring and
the alarm, the lightsaber igniting, just the red glow.
And you hear the panic of the rebellion guys.
They're all just like, open fire! Just my, I'm just like, he just does not let up. He's just like, yeah, I don't care, mowing through you. Oh yeah, I didn't forget about you. Cuts the guy in half.
The guy on the ceiling. Yeah.
I'm just like, oh man, rip to the homies. Just like
rip to the homies.
Rip to the homies. They tried so hard.
Oh, you, Jackson.
I cried the first time. It's
in terms
like,
of joy.
Yeah, like I just like being being able to see live action Vader content like that, where the most extreme we've seen of that has been like comics and books and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude, I get chills every time that you hear the alarm blaring, and it's just him. It's just him breathing in the darkness. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, I don't think I blinked that entire scene whenever I saw it, but I remember just seeing like a void of darkness, and then that red saber ignites, and you're like, "Oh no, it's go time, isn't it?"
It's the opera. It's the choir singing.
Yeah. Yeah, that callback to it, you get a little bit of that Revenge of the Sith score in there.
Yeah.
It's so great, and that moment is so. It's hard to talk about without just experiencing it. It's so good. It's so good, but we're kind of coming to the end here, and this we have the plans is almost get past Vader. Very barely get past Vader and into the hands of Princess Leia, and we get this great kind of resurrection of Carrie Fisher, of young Carrie Fisher. I kind of wanted to know, we didn't really talk about this, about earlier in the movie with Tarkin and kind of resurrecting dead actors, but we'll start with Leia here, then we'll kind of backtrack to Tarkin. But Stephen, what is your initial reaction of these CG resurrections of characters?
When I first saw it, I'm just like, cool, PS4 Pro graphics, great, made for the big screen. Okay, this will work. With Leia, the split second that you see with her, maybe like 3 to 5 seconds max, it works.
I think there's still something with that mouth movement that is off to me.
Yeah, she says hope really weirdly.
Yeah, the mouth movement's always going to be a thing that I think with the CG, they really just can't get it right because of the fact like that's the main thing. It's just like, we have to have them talk. It's just like, and then words just come out. It can't be like a bubble. I think that's always going to be the main thing with it. That's all I really have to say. I think it works for the 5 seconds that it's on screen for.
Yeah. What about you, Jackson? What about just start off with the Leia thing. We'll get into the Tarkin thing in a second.
I think the Leia cameo is, I think it looks a little rougher compared to Tarkin, but that makes more sense because she has, literally like the 5-second cameo she has. I don't think it looks terrible. She's a little shiny. And she says hope weird, but it's not unrecognizable. Like I'm able to process that it's supposed to be Carrie Fisher.
Do you think it takes you out of the moment? Is it distracting enough to take you out of the moment?
Not completely, but enough of me to almost like chuckle at the Carrie Fisher one. Whereas like the Tarkin one hasn't aged perfectly, but I remember liking it a lot when I first saw Rogue One and being like, wow, like it was actually really cool, like seeing them implement a character who the actor has been very much long dead and recreating Peter Cushing and kind of that sense of it. But going on as this movie gets older, it does look a little bit more aged and dated. Not saying it was perfect before, but like you can definitely tell now.
Well, did you watch this on Disney Plus?
I did, yes. And I watched it on a smaller TV too, and it didn't look terrible this recent viewing.
I was going to say, do you have a 4K TV?
Not my little TV, but I have a bigger TV that I've been jumping back and forth with them.
Okay, so I think that me and Steven agree that Tarkin looks tastic in 4K. Especially, even 5 years later, I think that the effects actually really hold up a lot more than I remember.
He's really detailed. If you really look at him, he's really detailed.
I mean, he's still sitting in that uncanny valley of,
his cheeks are a bit too shiny. That's like the nitpick for me.
And it's also the weird PS4 character movement of the mouth and the eyelids. I think they don't have that quite down pat yet. But if I was saying that, if I just took a screenshot of Rogue One, I would be like, holy crap, they just resurrected Steve.
They brought Peter Cushing back.
Peter Cushing. I almost said Stephen Cushing. I'm spending too much time with Stephen over here. But yeah, they basically, I think what they did is they took screenshots of Peter Cushing from A New Hope, and they kind of created a CG model off of those screenshots and then put them onto the actor's face. And I think
it's a deep fake. It's his face
kind
and
of.
like
it's like a CG 3D model.
Audio like facing, the facial.
It's like a CG 3D model motion capture, kind of like any motion / performance capture. But I think that the actor is, I don't know if you've seen Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1, the character Pius Thickness is the same actor as that played that played Tarkin in this movie. But yeah, I just thought that Tarkin, the more I watch this movie, the more Tarkin works for me on more levels, which is super surprising.
I love his kind of implementation in this movie. I love kind of where he is because it's interesting to see how he kind of stole the Death Star and then eventually used it to kill Krennic, you know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, and me and Stephen were talking, this movie couldn't really have been done without Tarkin in the picture.
I agree.
100%.
Yeah, there was no way the story could have been told without it, not making sense with when you tie it into A New Hope, because Tarkin is such a prominent character in A New Hope, and he has to be a prominent character in this film, especially when it comes to the Death Star and the development of the Death Star. And of course, Tarkin would want to take all the credit away from, Krennic when it comes to the building and development of the Death Star. But I think this movie ends on a super high note and just really gets you pumped for the original trilogy and A New Hope. And I think that this is one of the coolest endings to a Star Wars film of all time, because you immediately, once the credits roll, you're like, all right, pop in A New Hope. Let's go.
Yeah, let's keep going. Let's do it.
Yeah, it really gets you pumped for some OG Star Wars. And then one thing I did want to mention is the cameo of Chopper from Rebels. I love the Chopper cameo, and we also get that C-3PO R2 cameo. And it kept the tradition going of, C-3PO and R2 have to be in every Star Wars movie.
There's a lot of Rebels references in this movie.
Yeah, there's
they call for Syndulla. There's like the ghost in one scene where like it's in like the loading bay of Yavin.
Is it?
It's like in the corner actually. It's like when they first go to Yavin, in one of like the establishing shots, there's like a bunch of X-wings, but then you can see like the half end of the ghost.
Oh, I'll have to watch again for that. I never noticed that. Because I know the ghost is in The Rise of Skywalker, but I never noticed it. That's cool.
What?
The ghost is in The Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, and the big like final ship battle.
I would think that's where the only place you would see it, but I guess that's for a talk for another time whenever we get to the Rise.
Oh yeah, we'll get there. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, I think that is kind of all there is to talk when we go. Every week we like to go play by play on every Star Wars movie, but kind of getting into some other aspects of this movie other than just sequences and scenes. Let's kind of talk about some of our favorite quotes that are in this movie. Stephen, I know you have a couple fun ones that you really love from this movie.
I think the number one we can all say is book it! No, it's lies! Deception every day! Yeah. And of course, the famous church scene where they put the bag over stage, like, "Are you kidding me? I am blind." I hate to say this.
You like a lot of more of the comedic lines.
The comedic lines, yes, because that's where like my mind's going because of the fact I hope it's like some of the more memorable ones, but it's just like if I haven't seen the film enough or I really haven't like watched it like to a T and know where everything's at, it's not really that memorable for me, I'm afraid to say.
Quote wise, you mean?
Yes.
Okay. Jackson, what about you? What are some of your favorite Rogue One quotes?
We talked about save the rebellion, save the dream. I think that's my favorite one. I'm a big
it's such an iconic quote.
Yeah, such a final thing to say, especially for a character like Saw Gerrera.
Yeah, it's like his dying words.
I love I'm one with the Force is with me. I have a really cool pin where it's this gold little square, and in the middle it says the Force. And on the top half, it's upside down. It says, is with me. And then on the other half, it's switched around again. And it says, I am one with. So when you read it's one with the Force is with me. But you flip it around.
I love that.
I think my favorite like comedic line is when K2SO shows up after the Jeddah battle, and he's like taking out the stormtroopers. He's just like, you don't need me at all. He throws the grenade behind him. I should just go back to the ship.
Yeah. He's like, did you know that wasn't me?
Yeah.
When she kills that one.
Where are you taking these prisoners? These are prisoners. Yes. Where are you taking them?
I'm imprisoning them. In prison. Well, I think what you mean silence. And there's a fresh one for every time you step out of line.
Yeah.
The slap and the line that follows were both improvised.
Oh, really?
Were they?
Diego Luna improvised being slapped by the droid, and they essentially put it in later. And Alan Tudyk, when Diego Luna reacted, was like, "And there's a fresh one for you."
I love that. I love whenever Jin has a very, very brief stand-up comedy career. When she walks up, to the edge of the cliff on Jeddah, and she's like, "What's the deal with the destroyer? I mean, come on." She's like, "What's with the destroyer?" And I was like, as soon as that happened, I was like, "Stephen, does that not sound like? Does that sound like she has
to the U-wing like Kramer does the slide?"
Yeah, I was like, does that not sound like she's breaking into a bit? But yeah, I think Save the Rebellion, Save the Dream is, I think, the encapsulation of this movie for me, and that quote just really stands out to me. And you got a lot of those lovely comedic quotes that we already talked about. And I think this movie doesn't really have a lot of terribly memorable quotes. I mean, it does have some. I mean, we have rebellions are built on hope, and I'm so glad they cut that stupid line out from the trailer. Remember when the initial teaser, when Jin is like, "This is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel." Ugh, cut that crap. Get that out of here. I don't like that. I'm glad they cut that. But yeah, I think, this movie isn't terribly full of quotes, but there's certainly some good ones. Let's get into some standout performances in this movie. I mean, one that always sticks out to me is, that moment of when Jin is seeing that hologram of her father for the first time in however many years, and she has this really emotional reaction to it. I think that is Felicity Jones' best performance of this movie. But what are some other performances that stand out to you?
I would definitely have to say, along with that scene, Matt Mikkelsen's performance whenever he's on the hologram.
Yeah, for sure.
Just that dynamic.
Kind of pleading to his daughter.
He's just like, "I haven't forgotten about you. I wish I could be with you every step of this way, my Stardust. Like, I've loved you every second. I wish you were with me." And he's like, "But I've implemented this one weakness." And it's just the fact that it's just like, he goes away from that, but like in that one moment, it's just like, he's never stopped caring about his daughter. He's always thought about her and his wife. He's just like, "You have never once been not a part of me." So that's where performance goes for me. Mads Mikkelsen.
Cool. What about you, Jackson? What are some performances that stand out to you?
So this is actually my favorite Ben Mendelsohn performance of his entire filmography. I think he tries to really kind of recreate the essence he created with Orson Krennic in a lot of different roles that he plays in, and nothing hits just quite the same. He's my favorite. He's such a fresh breath of a villain that I bet you at the time too, he would have made a killer Thrawn. He would have made a really good Thrawn,
the snobby snottiness of Krennic is so great.
I love Ben Mendelsohn. I love just kind of his it's funny because he's kind of like this whiny man child, but he's so smart in it that he's just the fact that he's so emotional and gets so angry at things, I think is really kind of interesting of a character choice to have. I love Orson Krennic.
Yeah, and one character that we didn't really talk about, but one actor that I think never lost this character is Jimmy Smits playing Bail Organa. It's like he never went away from Bail Organa.
I cheered for Jimmy.
Yeah, and that moment where he's like, I have a friend, the Jedi. I would trust her with my life.
Can you trust this person to get your information? I would trust her with my life.
Man, yeah, that says so much. But and Alan Tudyk as K2SO. I mean, come on,
classic. He's so good.
Yeah, such a classic Rogue One performance, and I
Yeah.
think that he, for a lot of people, he made this movie, which I definitely do not disagree with. But let's kind of move on here. We're running out of time just a little bit, but let's kind of talk about some of the standout themes and lessons we learned from this movie, because there's a lot of, this movie says a lot about hope, and it says a lot about believing in yourself and your immediate comrades, and the choices you make, stuff like that. Stephen, what do you think some lessons and themes are that speak to you when you watch this movie?
I'm gonna have to go back to what Chert was saying. I'm one with the Force is with me. Even though he is not technically, he's not he's not a Jedi, so he can't wield the Force. He's more in tune with it.
Yeah, he's Force attentive.
Like, he knows there's this aura surrounding him because he allows him to feel it, to listen to it. He allows it to flow through him and take control. That's whenever he's fighting the stormtroopers, I feel like that's just the Force taking control and him letting just instinct take in because of the fact he doesn't have his sight. So he's this instinct that he's also listening to, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you think that connects to your life specifically? How do you think, why do you connect with that so much?
I just think because of the fact that it's your gut feeling, your gut instinct. If you're listening to the little voice inside your head saying that this is what you should do, that's what you should do.
Yeah.
You should follow it.
And this is kind of something we discuss a lot on this show, is I think Star Wars has a lot to do with, it's not as much destiny, while there is some notes of, your what you're destined for and what your destiny says what you should do. It's more about what the choices you make and what you do with the opportunities that are presented to you. Do you think that there are themes of that in this movie as well? The choices you make and where that brings you?
Oh, of course. So, for instance, whenever Jin loses Galen, she chooses to not just drop everything. She chooses to side with the rebellion because of the fact she has to finish what her father started. Yeah. So I think of it as, yes, there are some recurring themes that you could say in life that are very true to this movie.
For sure. Jackson, what about you? Anything that you picked up watching this?
I kind of agree with this is kind of piggybacking off of trust your instinct, and in the Force is there's always something to fight for. There's always something to have hope for, and I think that relies with what your instinct tells you is what you necessarily decide what is right and wrong. And that's kind of, at least with Jin, and I would say also Cassian, is just they both have that realization in the movie that they need to kind of put on their big boy pants and do what they believe in, what they believe is right.
Yeah.
There's always something to fight for. I think that's also with Admiral Raddus. There's always something to fight for.
Man, I don't know if I told you, but I actually, this past time watching this movie, I actually cried. Stephen can attest to that.
He did.
Tears actually started coming down my face, especially during that heartbreaking scene with Galen's hologram and Jin. And, and I also started tearing up when you mentioned Admiral Raddus, and, just the way he is able and how instrumental Admiral Raddus is to that mission.
Yeah.
Is so great. And, like I said before, Star Wars is always about choices, what you do with those choices, and how those choices you make impact who you are as a person. And I think that, we see a lot of that with Jin, and even characters like, we have Baze, upon the death of Chirrut, he chooses to fight for the cause, and he chooses to take what his friend has taught him his entire life, being one with the Force and trusting in this mystical force, and taking that to heart and bringing that with him to the grave. And I think that is so powerful to me, and the way that he's able to connect with his friend. And, you know, just, you know, sometimes in life, I think that we have to remind ourselves to trust in the Force and trust in the process and trust in the way of doing things. And, you know, sometimes we just have to sit down and remind ourselves that we are one with the Force is with us. What will happen will happen. And, you know, I think that is so powerful in this movie is, you know, these characters are facing death. You know, they're looking death in the eyes for the last 30 minutes. And I think, you know, that is something that always speaks to me for sure. But, you know, kind of the last little aspect I wanted to hit on here before we close out for the night. Stephen, what are some of your favorite musical moments of this movie?
I would have to say the entire climax of this film, the Battle of Scarif, has some impressive musical moments, I would say. Like I said before, whenever the two Star Destroyers clash within each other, and then you have that one moment where it's just nothing, but just the music behind it. And then just the two Star Destroyers going through the shield. That's definitely one of them. Yeah. I think another one is when Tarkin says, "You might fire when ready" on the rebel base of Scarif, or rebel base on the base of Scarif. You see the green glow in Krennic's eyes, and as you see the laser firing,
and you get that musical cue there. Yeah,
you get the musical cue. It phases through the top of the tower. Krennic's dead. It goes into the ocean and just completely starts wiping out everything. And as Jyn and Cassian are talking to each other, and then they just hold each other for one last time before
that's powerful. Yeah,
everything just swallows them up, and then they pass on.
And I really hope that moment has even more weight once we've seen the Andor show. But Jackson, what about you? What are some of your favorite musical moments in this movie?
So I kind of formulated this opinion while I was watching it this turn, but the music in this really stands out to me for a bunch of different reasons, because none of it specifically, I would say, besides the two Star Destroyers, and it's when the Death Star's peeking over Scarif and it's just the light clarinet playing. The music in this, it's a little loud, it's a little bold at like times that I don't necessarily think it needs to be, but it's so different to me from other sounding Star Wars stuff that I think it kind of just works perfectly, because Rogue One in its entirety has been different. It's been not what we are used to Star Wars wise. It's gritty, it's rough, it's a kind of more about the people living in it, especially fighting this war. And while I think the music doesn't necessarily match that vibe, I think it falls into the place of being different while still trying to be something we recognize, which is exactly what Rogue One is. It's exactly what Rogue One is taking all of the elements we know from all of these, from the previous classic movies, and then giving us this fresh, different, I say modern sense of it. Like it's like a story that's more because it was made in 2016. It was able to kind of have, you know, more, I guess, modern aspects to it that made it feel like that. But there's a sense of like retroism to Rogue One, and I think the music kind of holds that, and like it's almost like it's paying homage to John Williams without copying John Williams. It's that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and we were even saying, like, even, you know, even if we're kind of talking about not exactly the score and the music, is even the vibe of this movie is very retro, and like the hairstyles of a lot of the people are very 70s, and we got a lot of people with comb overs and mustaches, and you know,
a lot of the Rebellion costumes are the original costume pieces from like their OG movies,
and I think that's definitely intentional. But you know, I agree with you that the score of this music is very big and you know, in your face, and I think that, you know, this is the first Star Wars movie that we get that isn't scored by John Williams. And I think we're kind of going in expecting it to be this Williams-esque, you know, Kevin Kiner is able to... Kevin Kiner, the composer of, you know, shows we love like Clone Wars and Rebels, he's able to capture the Williams spirit. I think Giacchino, who is the person who scored this movie.
Oh, that's
I
right.
think,
It is Michael Giacchino.
Yeah. I think that he brings a very sci-fi element to Star Wars when it comes to music. And I know a lot of people do like that. But, like I said before, this moment where, Krennic's ship comes down, we get that weird sci-fi Battlestar Galactica music cue. It just didn't really work for me. I do love the main theme, though. And I think the Rogue One theme is super emotional and powerful and catchy. The ba 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 ba. I love that theme so much, and the it kind of echoes the original Star Wars theme. The ba 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 ba. It kind of echoes that without being completely unoriginal, and I love that about what Giacchino was able to do with this film. So I think the music. It's something that it has grown on me over the years. And like I was saying to Stephen, this is probably only my 6th or 7th time seeing this movie ever. So that kind of shows how kind of behind I am on watching this movie, especially. But we'll kind of close up our thoughts here. I think we had a really great discussion. We kind of got into every little aspect we wanted to. Stephen, do you have any closing thoughts on Rogue One? Anything we didn't get to or discuss? Anything else you wanted to discuss? Anything like that? The floor is yours.
I will say this. Whenever I came out of the movie theater back in 2015, was it 2015?
2016.
16, excuse me.
2016.
I will say, I will repeat myself to what I said that day. Honestly, I think it is one of the best Star Wars films I've seen since The Empire Strikes Back. Honestly, even though it doesn't have some of the emotional depth that Empire would have because of the one scene that everyone talks about from Star Wars, it just has a lot of emotional moments to it. It has a lot of meaning and heart behind it. It's actually the start, if you want to say it like that. It's before Episode 4, and it's the start of this.
It's the start of the Star Wars.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the start of the Star Wars. Yes. It's just gonna hold a lot of meaning in the near future. I would say for a lot of people that they're like, "Oh, watch Episode 4." No. You need to watch Rogue One.
We gotta watch the prequels, but not the prequel. The prequel that came before A New Hope, but it came after the prequels, so it's not really a prequel, but it's a prequel to The New Hope. Yeah, it's kind of confusing.
Right.
But yeah, Jackson, what's kind of your closing thoughts here on Rogue One before we head out tonight?
I think Rogue One does a really good job at see, there's a lot of different senses to Star Wars, but I mean the sense of Star Wars that was kind of held in Empire, to where it was, I say it was made for adults because it was made for adults, but it holds kind of that like classic Star Wars to it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't want to say it's the magic, because it's not the magic, but like
it's the vibe.
There's just a really, it's so well detailed. I think they do a really good job at just making it like it feels like a Star Wars story. It's yeah, that's kind of my piece. It does a really good job at just kind of feeling very real in this universe and in these kind of stories that we witness and whatnot.
Yeah. And for me, I think it does what it sets out to do, and is to be this raw classic war movie set in the Star Wars universe, and to be this kind of bridge of the prequel era to A New Hope in this really flawless way.
Without losing the touch of Star Wars.
Exactly.
Without losing the meaning of Star Wars.
Yeah, for sure. And it gives us these cameos, like we get Chopper from Rebels, we get, R2 and 3PO, a little cameo from them. And it just gives us everything we want. And I've always been fascinated by the fact that this is such a Star Warsy movie, but with no Jedi. Not a single lightsaber is ignited besides Vader's in that ending sequence. And there is not a single good Jedi, showcased in this movie. And I think that says a lot about, Star Wars is not just, space wizards and guns shooting. There's so much more to it. And there's so much more to love about Star Wars. And I think that originally opened my eyes to, just what I love about Star Wars. Because I've always been, one of those people who have loved, the Jedi and Force aspect. And I've always thought, how the Jedi and Force are kind of the Big Mac of Star Wars. And, there's a lot more to it than that. And there's a lot more pieces to this puzzle. And I think we'll find out more as more things start to release and more stories are told, that there's a lot more to Star Wars than we know. And I think that I'm super excited for what's to come. And Rogue One was, in my opinion, a great addition to the Star Wars saga, and was a great kind of spin-off to what we love and know in Star Wars. But guys, I think that is about all the time we have. Stephen, I cannot thank you enough for coming on and talking about this movie that it seems to be the least disputed Star Wars Disney era movie that we know of. But Stephen, kind of closing out with you, where can they find you on social media? What's all your handles everyone wants to follow you at? Just where can we find you?
So on my Instagram, I am Grandpappy Brda, and on Facebook, you can find me as Stephen Brda Jr. That's really the only two I really am on as of right now.
Yeah, and also stay tuned for some more content from me and Stephen. I will leave it at that. Jackson, where can they find you on the socials?
You can find my Twitter at Quackson_Scalene. That's QUACKSON_ Scalene like the triangle. Oh, sorry, I choked on my spit.
Where can they find you on the...
And then you can find me on Instagram at Daleen_photography. It's DALEEN_photography. Braydon, what about you?
As always, you can always find me on Twitter at Braydathlon and on Instagram at braydonleadbetter. And if you want to find the podcast on any of our socials, on Instagram, we are through Imperial Eyes Pod. Twitter, we are Imperial Eyes Pod. And YouTube, you can just search up Imperial Eyes Podcast. We will come up, and all of our episodes are in video form if you want to check that out there, if you're a YouTube person. And as always, it is very vitally super duper important for you to go to our Apple Podcast and check it out and leave that rating, leave that review. It really helps us out, helps the show out, and it allows people to see our show on their podcast feed.
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy, baby.
Don't be shy.
If you don't have Apple Podcasts, please check us out on that Spotify. Give us a follow. Any of those podcast streaming platforms, we're always there. And if you ever have any questions for us that you want us to talk about on our main show on Thursdays, please hit up our socials. We always respond, and we always are grateful for people who reach out to us. So please do that. But until then, I know next week we have another news episode coming on Thursday, and we're also getting into my favorite, Jackson. You know what we're doing next week. Here we go with The Last Jedi. We're getting there, baby. We're gonna discuss in deep, dirty detail The Last Jedi with another special guest, so please stay tuned for that. But again, thank you guys for listening, and until next week, may the Force be with you.